Good evening. Thanks for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shereen Bhan. The headlines we're tracking for you tonight. The U.S. government steps in to avoid contagion and shore up confidence after Silicon Valley Bank becomes only the second in U.S. history to go down. HSBC agrees to buy the U.K. business of the bank. President Biden says the U.S. banking system is safe. No losses will be borne by the taxpayer. Stock markets stumble across the world as fears of a contagion from the SVB collapse looms large. Bank stocks get battered. Back home, the Sensex and the Nifty falling to their lowest level in 5 months. A crushing weekend, sleepless nights. Dozens of Indian startups that banked with SVB remain on tenterhooks. Some are relieved that the threat of an extinction event has passed and say diversification of risk is the biggest lesson learned. Inflation remains stubborn in February. Consumer prices index at 6.44%, above the RBI comfort zone. Cereal and milk prices the key culprit, even as vegetable prices fall. The union government incurs an additional expenditure of 1.5 lakh crore rupees in the second supplementary demand for grants. Higher fertilizer subsidy and pension payment lead to higher cash outgo, but this remains within the budget size of nearly 42 lakh crore rupees. Adani Group gains market capitalization for the 9th session. This after promoters prepaid share-back loans worth over $2 billion. A 5-judge constitution bench of the Supreme Court will hear cases seeking to legalize same-sex marriage. Petitioners propose live streaming of the court's proceedings. The government opposes legal recognition but does not term it unlawful either. Onion farmers in Maharashtra take to the street as prices continue to drop. Unseasonal rains damage crops, adding to concerns. A double Oscar delight for Indian cinema at the Academy Awards. Natu Natu from RRR wins the Oscar for Best Original Song. The Elephant Whisperers wins in the Best Documentary Shot Subject category. Everything Everywhere All at Once shines at the Academy Awards, wins 7 Oscars. Michelle Yeoh becomes the first Asian origin woman to win the Best Actress. Brendan Fraser wins Best Actor for the movie The Whale. Also on the show, meet Alok Kejriwal, a hearing-impaired businessman trying to make movies and news more accessible to the deaf community. A special report coming up. Well, straight to the top story this evening. Stock markets across the world nervous after the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, the second in U.S. history to go belly up. The U.S. government has stepped in to shore up confidence to avoid a contagion. Regulators have promised that depositors will be paid their full amount. A second institution, Signature Bank, has been shut down. Regulators said that its depositors would also be made whole. Now, just minutes before the opening bell on Wall Street, U.S. President Joe Biden spoke about the crisis and attempted to allay concerns. He said the U.S. banking system is safe, also adding that all executives at these banks will be sacked and the U.S. taxpayer will not have to bear any of the losses. Listen in.
All customers who had deposits in these banks can rest assured, rest assured they'll be protected and they'll have access to their money as of today. That includes small businesses across the country that bank there and need to make payroll, pay their bills, and stay open for business. No losses will be, and this is an important point, no losses will be borne by the taxpayers.
We have replaced short-term uncertainty, especially the possibility of a banking crisis today, with the medium and long-term uncertainty about the banking system, the Fed, and the economy, with the question of how much the time we've bought will solve these problems. This is what David Rosenberg says. This is what happens when the Fed takes the punch bowl away. The bowl breaks and the central bank and the regulators respond with glue. Is it just glue? Take a look at what's happened here. SVB Signature, they have been resolved. Uninsured deposits guaranteed across the country. A new Fed fund has been established to finance banks at par with their assets rather than at the market value. Duration risk reckoning, that is the need to reckon with that duration risk, has been removed but not necessarily resolved over any period of time longer than a year. Here's what we don't know. The impact on the Federal Reserve and their monetary policy. Do they pause or continue hiking? Will uninsured depositors feel safe in smaller banks now that those deposits have been insured? How will banks pay for this depositor guarantee they have now been gifted? Where were the bank regulators when all of this was going on? And can banks fix their duration risk in the year that they've now been provided?
Steve Leesman, many thanks for joining us. In India's cross-border SaaS companies on the front line after the collapse of SVB, with most having accounts with the beleaguered bank. Ritu joins us now to take us through the impact on Indian companies and how they are placed as of today. Ritu.
Well, sleepless nights, a crash course in treasury management, the threat of an extinction event and lessons in risk diversification are perhaps some of the phrases that best describe the last few days for tech startups in India, which have been impacted by the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank. Now, while the US government has assured depositors they will be made whole, but in the near term, this could lead to cash flow problems, which in turn could lead to trouble in meeting payrolls and other day-to-day expenses. And there's also the question of what happens to any uninsured deposits as well. The larger concern is that many VCs deposited millions in the bank, which could lead them to further slow down funding moves and delay term sheets. Now, as to who the impacted startups in India are, well, a majority of Y Combinator-backed startups, which typically deposit their first checks in SVB, will be the most impacted. And according to reports, about 60% of Y Combinator startups have Indian founders and operations in the US and India, with an exposure to the bank and deposits of about $250,000 or more each. Now, according to data from Traction, the bank had invested in about 21 Indian startups, which includes the likes of Shadi, Naptol, Paytm, which of course it later exited. Nazara Technologies has said that 2 of its step-down subsidiaries held cash balances of about $8 million in the bank, but it does not expect any impact on the day-to-day operations. Freshworks also issued a statement clarifying its exposure to the bank was minimal and that it didn't see any disruption.
The overnight statement by Senator Yellen saying that the government will ensure that all depositors are covered, not only the amounts covered by $250,000, but beyond that as well, gives us a lot more hope. They offer, especially for international companies like ourselves and our subsidiaries, much faster onboarding and on-ramping, for accounts.
Next steps are really very simple, which is we never, ever want to be in this situation as a company. And that's what we're working with our founders on. I think one high-level thought that I've been playing with is how can a startup, right from the seed stage, have access to a fractional CFO who essentially gives them the oversight that is required to help them think through all things that matter, including treasury and how they are parking the funds that they're raising.
We've understood that hopefully the extinction event that people were talking about or the run on other banks that people were worried about will not happen. Diversification, both from a VC fund perspective, from a startup treasury perspective, from any startup-focused bank perspective, that seems to be the key word. Because one thing that's actually scary in a sense is that this is the first bank run which was sparked and catalyzed digitally. So I think that there will be more events like these in the future.
Well, temporary relief, at least at this point in time. One will have to wait to see how all of this pans out, and of course nervousness across markets, including ours. Here's the action on Dalal Street, where the SVB crisis rocked investor sentiment. Sensex and the Nifty hitting their lowest level in 5 months. Bank stocks being the worst hit. Prashant is standing by to take us through the market action. Prashant, this is global risk off and India being impacted.
Well, pretty poor day for bulls who were hoping that with the announcement coming in early in the morning today that the US government is stepping in to protect depositors, things will calm down. It was not to be the case. The first half was still okay, but then things accelerated on the downside. The Nifty broke February 2023 lows. Bank Nifty followed, breaking those lows. And of course, we are closing at fresh lows in that sense. All sectoral indices in the red. Wix saw a very large jump as, in some sense, the fear that perhaps there will be a global banking contagion gripped markets. So it was a question of selling first and asking questions later, waiting for clarity later. As I said, banks perhaps have been the problem, and they were the big losers here as well. PSU Bank Index down about 3%. You had the small cap index, which was down 2%. The auto index lost about 2%. The mid cap index was down about 1.8% as well. Actually, broader markets, mid caps and small caps were selling off from the beginning, and there was no stopping that. It only accelerated towards the close. there was only one stock which ended meaningfully higher today, which is Tech Mahindra, so easier to count the gainer. In terms of losers, as I said, more from banking than anywhere else. IndusInd Bank down 7, SBI down 3. You had Bajaj Finserv, HDFC Life, Axis Bank, financials basically taking it on the chin in terms of trade. Broader markets, of course, declines outnumbering advances by a huge ratio. This is very much a global story now, and I think that is what one needs to track. We have 2 bank failures in the US where government has stepped in, but market fears that it won't be limited. It will spread to more smaller regional banks, and that's the contagion fear which the market is reacting to at this point in time. So global developments become very important to track as we come back tomorrow morning. Back to you.
Yes, global developments is what we will be tracking very closely. Prashant, many thanks for joining us. But the big macro story, inflation remains stubborn in the month of February. Consumer price index at 6.44%, above the RBI's comfort zone. Cereal and milk prices continue to be the key culprits, even as vegetable prices have fallen. Lata joins us now with her take on what this could now mean as far as the MPC action is concerned. Lata.
Yes, clearly the inflation number is worse than what the street was expecting. Not much worse, but clearly worse. The street was prepared for 6.3, maybe a little higher. 6.44 is a nasty jar. And the constituents of that inflation should also be worrisome because they are products consumed by the broad swathe of Indians. Cereals inflation continuing to come in at 16.73% and milk inflation rising to 9.7%. Last month, milk inflation had risen by 8.7%. So clearly, these are 2 important elements that are driving up food prices. Food inflation on the whole remaining very close to 6%, coming in at 5.95%. Core inflation is also not something that is giving the RBI any solace. It's come in at 6.1%, very much like January. If you recall, in the December policy, the Reserve Bank had particularly put in core inflation in its stance, saying that it wants to break the persistence of high core inflation. Neither January nor February give them that comfort. So our panel of experts genuinely believe that a rate hike is to be expected in the April policy. However, everything depends on how the global situation pans out. There is an inflation number that will come out from the Fed, that will come out from the US on Tuesday evening, our time, and there is the FOMC decision on March 22nd. There will be a new dot plot, which the FOMC members will vote on. All that will also be inputs into the Reserve Bank's decision. So at the moment, Indian inflation nasty is pointing to another rate hike, but all bets will be determined by the global situation.
Yes, thanks very much, Lata, for joining us. A quick check of some of the other key headlines tonight. Adani Group gained market cap for the 9th session. This after promoters prepaid share-backed loans worth over $2 billion. The group's market cap remains below 10 lakh crore rupees compared to its peak of nearly 25 lakh crores. Shifting focus to the auto space, leading passenger vehicle maker Hyundai Motor India has signed a term sheet to acquire General Motors' Talegaon plant in Maharashtra. The final agreement will be inked after Hyundai receives all legal clearances from authorities, including a settlement with retrenched workers at the Talegaon plant. Supreme Court has agreed to hear Torrent Investments' plea in the Reliance Capital resolution matter on the 20th of March. Torrent is challenging the NCLAT's nod, allowing a second round of auction on the 20th of March. The budget session of Parliament has resumed after the reset. The union government has incurred an additional expenditure of 1.5 lakh crore rupees in the second supplementary demand for grants. Higher fertilizer subsidy and pension payments have led to the higher cash outgo, but this remains within the budget size of nearly 42 lakh crore rupees. And a day of double delight for Indian cinema at the Oscars. The Elephant Whisperers won the coveted award for Best Documentary Short Subject. And exactly an hour later, Natu Natu, the foot-tapping song from the magnum opus RRR, won the Oscar for Best Original Song. This is the first time a song from an Indian film has won the Oscar for Best Song. Actor Deepika Padukone graced the stage to announce the live performance. Shilpa Ratnam captures what has been a landmark day for Indian cinema.
Na paata sudu naatu 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 veera naatu
A country known for its song and dance. But not once has a song from an Indian film won at the Academy Awards. On March 13th, history was made at the 95th Academy Awards.
RRR!
Natu Natu from RRR won for Best Original Song, and an elated composer-lyricist duo, M. Keeravani and Chandra Bose, received the coveted golden statuettes.
Thank you, Academy. I grew up listening to the Carpenters, and now here I am with the Oscars. There was only one wish on my mind. So was Rajamouli's and my family's. RRR has to win, pride of every Indian, and must put me on the top of the world.
Deepika Padukone introduced Natu Natu at the Dolby Theatre to exalted cheers.
In addition to being sung in Telugu and illustrating the film's anti-colonialist themes, it's also a total banger. It's on millions of views on YouTube and TikTok, has audiences dancing in movie theaters all around the world, and is also the first song ever from an Indian production to be nominated for an Oscar.
Singers Rahul Sipligunj and Kala Bhairava put up a performance that was worthy of the standing.
There were no surprises. It was a song that deserved to be there because it was a happy song, great energy, and it's energy for the world. And I really think that I'm partial, but my son-in-law really made it happen. So I'm very proud of him.
A song that was made for the locals, a film that was deeply Indian, the victory was never reverse engineered. The authenticity of the folk genre and the expanse of Rajamouli's vision propelled RRR onto the biggest global stage in entertainment. Hollywood A-listers championed the film, and their enthusiasm was infectious. Music has no barriers, it's often said, but the ascent to the summit hasn't been an easy climb for India. The Oscar is indeed valuable, but the love from millions of Indians is what makes Natu Natu priceless.
Well, congratulations to Team RRR for the win. And Elephant Whisperers, a Netflix film directed by Kartiki Gonzalez, was adjudged the winner in the documentary short subject category. Set in the Mudumalai National Park, the film captures the bonding of an orphaned baby elephant with his caretakers.
This is the first Oscar for any Indian production, and 2 women here won this. 1.4 billion Indians, this is for you, ye aapke liye hai. We have all manifested this together. I just want to say to all the women watching, the future is audacious, and the future is us, and the future is here. Thank you. Let's go. Jai Hind.
Well, the Supreme Court has observed that on the issue of legal recognition for same-sex marriages in India, it is an important issue, but it's referred the matter to a 5-judge constitution bench. Final arguments will be heard on the 18th of April. The government is opposing legal status to gay marriage, even as it maintains that such unions are not illegal. Onion farmers in Maharashtra take to the streets as prices continue to drop. Unseasonal rain has damaged crops, adding to concern. Santiagora reports from a protest site in Nashik.
This group of people which you can see, these are farmers. Most of them are tribal farmers, and they are actually on a journey. They are walking towards Mumbai. They started their long march from Nashik's Dindori region. That is 53 kilometers from this location, and they have decided to walk till Mumbai, and they have certain demands and they want the government to hear them out.
हमें सरकार पे कुछ मांगना नहीं है, हमारे पास सब है, जमीन हमारे पास है, उसना 7-12 करके देना, मौजमाप करके देना, 5 एकड़ सबको, 10 एकड़ सबको, जितना हमारे पास है वो देना। कांदा हम ही बनाता है, उसका भाव हमें मांगता है 700 रुपए दो, क्विंटल का 2000 दो, ये हमारे तरफ से जो हम मांगता है वो देना है।
अभी है ना, पहले लॉन्ग मार्च गेला तर आम्हाला काहीच प्राप्त झाली नाही त्याच्यामुळे आम्ही आहे ना आता डायरेक्ट आम्ही दिंडोरीहून निघालो. दिंडोरीहून निघालो तर आम्ही आमच्या मागण्या मान्य झाल्या तरच आम्ही मागं थांबू, नाही तर आम्ही डायरेक्ट मुंबईला मंत्रालयात जाऊ शकतो.
So let me translate this in Marathi. The gentleman just said that he left from Dindori and the protesters have decided that they are going to go to Mumbai. If their demands are not met, they are going to go to the assembly. Sir, इसके अलावा जमीन के अधिकार जो हैं उसके अलावा और क्या मांग है किसानों की?
नहीं, जो प्याज के ऊपर जो निर्यात लगा दिया है उन्होंने, वो निर्यात अगर गवर्नमेंट ने उठा लिया तो उसको एक मार्केट के अंदर एक कंपटीशन आने के बाद में उसका रेट सही हो जाएगा. आज जो नाफेड ने खरीदी बंद कर लिया है, कांदा तैयार करने के लिए 600 से 700 रुपया क्विंटल खर्चा आ जाता है और आज वो 300 से 400 रुपए के ऊपर मार्केट में जाता नहीं.
Protesting farmers marching to Mumbai. Now, ever wonder how people who are hearing impaired watch movies or the news on TV? Well, the quick answer is that they don't. But that's changing thanks to Mumbai-based deaf businessman. Archana Solanki takes you inside Alok Kejriwal's world, a world he's intent on making more inclusive.
Solanki, and with me is Mansi Shah. Today we'll talk about a story, a beautiful story. This is about Mr. Alok Kejriwal, a deaf businessman who's used his deafness as his superpower and is now on course to changing the lives of 18 million deaf people of the country. Kejriwal insists we use the word deaf to refer to him over any other term. And this insistence is part of his mission, a mission of inclusiveness, a mission to make the news, movies and other forms of content more accessible to the 1.8 crore deaf people in India. And this is what it looks and sounds like.
अब एक बड़ा घोटाला सामने आया है जिसने दोनों की प्रतिष्ठा को धूमिल कर दिया है.
Kejriwal, who runs an export business with a presence in over 60 countries, set up iSetch News in 2018. iSetch stands for India Signing Hands. And Kejriwal says the idea arose from his frustration with how most mainstream news channels do not cater to the hearing impaired community.
Our news has subtitles, the anchor is deaf, which delivers the news in sign language, and we have voiceovers. So each and every person can watch this news, be it hearing or deaf together, also they can watch. And also parents of deaf children, they can also learn signs.
His team at iSetch News is busy making videos that use sign language to deliver the news in short clips online. But he wants to expand this to movies and open a door that's now been closed to the hearing impaired for decades. iSetch News also wants to translate nursery rhymes, web series and serials into sign language, but the response has been mixed.
Our thing is, I'm trying to meet many film producers. Few are accepting, to translate movies. Like I said, Kashmir Files, Kutch Express 83. Now I got one more new movie. It's coming soon. But mostly, let me be very honest, they are like, I'm not interested. They are just ignoring us.
Kejriwal and his team have also collaborated with Ranveer Singh to trigger a conversation around creating accessible content.
Collaborated with Reliance Entertainment to translate the movie 83 in ISL.
My favorite movie is Sholay. I have almost watched 10 times.
But Kejriwal has a bigger message. The society must move beyond just being sympathetic to the hearing impaired and allow them more representation and better opportunities.
Mostly hearing people ask me, can you drive? I'm like, yeah, that's normal. Come on, what is wrong in that? So, all hearing schools should add this optional language, like they have English, Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati or French or Spanish. They should add a sign language also, because this will be very beneficial for them to communicate with other deaf kids. Wherever they travel, like if person wants to become a doctor, they're like, oh, you are deaf, then that doctor can easily communicate with deaf person. In America, all university has ASL course, be it hearing university. It is an optional course, but in India, they don't even give this option.
This, he says, must start in classrooms. In Mumbai, Archana Solanki for CNBC-TV18.
Well, thank you to Alok Kejriwal for making us think about what we can do to also ensure that we reach out to a wider community of people and make our news a lot more inclusive as well. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned. The news continues here on CNBC TV18.